Someone You Should Know. A program about people you know and even more that you don't. Hosted by Stuart Sax, veteran, husband, father, and grandfather. Now, here's your host, Stuart Sax.
Well, welcome to another edition of Someone You Should Know. And we are going to have a good time today because you're going to learn something. You're going to maybe find a new avenue to release all of your good intentions and things that you've always wanted to do in your life. We are brought to you by our good friend Christine Dean, who is the networking diva. I talk about her all the time, and I am so in love with this woman because she is the producer of this show. She's also a sponsor of this show. And she also knows absolutely everything there is to know about taking your business, your presence on the internet to the next level. You know, we all can use a little bit of tweaking. And if you don't have the ability to do it, you reach out to Christine Dean. She can take care of it for you affordably. You can even have a consultation with her. Check out Christine Dean, the networking diva, and all. Love her to death. Thank you so much for all you do, Christine. Well, I know people have often said to me several times, boy, Stuart, you've talked to so many people and you've had so many great experiences in your life. You should write a book. And, you know, I have thought about that so many times over the years. But then there's always those other questions about, oh, when am I going to find the time? How do I do it? Do I have the ability to do it? Do I know what I'm doing? Well, I think most people have a book inside of them and they just don't know how to get the book out and onto paper. Well, today you are going to meet the most published author that you've never heard of, Maggie Mills. Maggie, how are you?
I am delighted to be here and chatting with you. And let me tell you, I love that intro. I was sitting here dancing.
It's
Fun.
you do what I have heard of often through the years, and I've often wondered, well, how does a ghostwriter really know what I'm thinking and how I want to put those words on paper? You know, if I could find the time to put the words on paper, I would. But if I don't, then a ghostwriter can also be an author coach, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
So what, I guess my first question is, have you always been a writer?
Oh, my goodness. Well, in one form or another, yes. I wrote my first TV script when I was about 5 years old.
What?
None of the major networks picked it up. I have to tell you that. But
5 years old. Wow.
my mother was very creative, and in the process of trying to keep me occupied, she had me write a TV script, and then we made like a storyboard for it and a little
Right.
tiny television out of a shoebox, and then I did the illustrations, and we rolled it through the TV box, and that was my first. My mother always encouraged it.
Was
So
your mother in that business?
no,
Was
actually, my mother was a photographer during World War II.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. So she had the ability to conceive pictures into a story in a storyboard.
Yeah, she was a brilliant woman with an off the charts imagination.
Well, I can see that some of it rubbed off on you because that you decided to do that. Now, did you as a child, did you also, as you got into your teenage years and all, did you still write short stories or novels or things like that? Or,
I
where did it come from?
I wound up, I've always loved storytelling, even when I wasn't thinking about it as a career. I wound up as the editor-in-chief of the high school newspaper, which means when you work on the high school newspaper, you're also taking pictures and you're writing the sports stories. And I studied journalism my first year at my second college. I went to a few. Um, and I went into graphics, advertising, and marketing because I thought I could earn money there. Still didn't see a big future in writing, but writing was involved with so many of the jobs I had, especially when I got into advertising and marketing and publishing. I was just doing more and more writing, and it was my love, and it came naturally to me.
You know, you bring up a good point because traditionally, uh, to make a living out of writing, make a living as a newspaper journalist or so, you ain't going to get rich. If you write something that gets a big award, maybe that helps to catapult it. But generally, it is. I have found in my life meeting people that have been in journalism and have been, in that career. They do it for the love of it. I have a
Oh,
very good friend who writes columns for the Chicago Tribune.
mhm.
She, she's not living on Michigan Avenue in a high rise. She does it because she loves the challenge of writing the stories and doing that. And so for the people that are watching and listening, then that might be saying, well, then why take all of that time to try and write what's in my head on paper, only to find out that maybe I can't get published or so. Please explain to these people that if you have the desire to do this, that maybe you need somebody like Maggie Mills to help you chart that journey from start to finish.
I am a literary enabler when it comes to that, because it's about so much more than the money you're going to earn from the sale of your book. And for virtually every author I work with, that is their goal, something other than using the book alone. And you can earn money from a book. And there are multiple revenue streams that you can engage because you have a book. Mostly it's people who have a story to share, and they can't not share it. They need to get it out, even if it's a business book. And I work on a number of those. People have been in their particular industry for a certain amount of time. They want to share their knowledge. They want to use that book to help their speaking career. And it's always about they have information to share. And it becomes so valuable to them. The process of writing the book can be very much like therapy, because we have conversations in the process of writing the book, just like you and I do. And you know that it's like a brainstorming session. What the other person says will remind you of something that had been buried for years. Like, oh my gosh, I just thought about this thing. And that's what brings out the detail in the book, these type of conversations.
So if I'm thinking that I want to write about either a specific event or just my life in general, I sit down with you and I'm like the patient on the couch talking to the therapist. You take the notes, you listen to the stories and all, and then you use your expertise to weave those conversations and thoughts into words on a page.
Yes, I will record the calls, and then I get a transcript made from the calls. And I work from that. And the first thing we do when we're working together, and I call them the author, I might be doing the typing, but they're the author. It's their story. And the first thing we do is we work on some organization. Who are you writing to? What do you want to say to them? What's the point you want to get across? We make a very simple outline like you would do in high school. Very simple outline. And the first chapter I write is where we really concentrate on, have I captured your voice? Because the book needs to sound like you, not me. I am sarcastic. I have a very childish sense of humor. I find terrible things really funny.
Uh,
That's not everyone's voice. Some books are serious, and a couple of books I've been requested to add humor in there. It's important to capture the voice in a way that also reflects the author's region, where they grew up, their belief system, their religion, their politics. All of that is reflected in our lexicon. So by working from the transcripts, I am reminded not just of the points we want to make, but some of the exact words that the author uses. Now, we still want to make that book accurate, grammatically correct, have some punctuation in there. But that book is a reflection of the author. They will be interviewed about the book. They will use the book on their speaking tour. They'll sell the book there. There can't be a disconnect. You can't have somebody who is just an ornery cusser and drops an F-bomb out of every sentence and not have one cuss word in the book. We won't have one in every sentence. It gets a little boring, but we keep those things in there. And people from the South have a certain way of describing things and are slower to get to the point. And we tell stories differently. So we encompass all of that and make sure we maintain that voice throughout the storytelling.
Is it fair to say that you, in some regards, are like an actress, that you are going to be playing a role? So you have to kind of put yourself not only into that author's shoes, but also into their soul and their persona, so that when you are writing as them.
I think that's a fair description, and a fun one as well, because I do research my authors, and I start before we have our first meeting. I find out everything I can about them. Some people call it stalking. I call it being professional. I want to know who I'm dealing with.
Right.
I look for any online presence they already have. Have they already been interviewed? Are there videos? Are there blog posts? What is their CV? You can pick up a lot, as we know these days, by someone's online presence. And I will ask them for whatever materials they have. Some cases, there are people who do not want the book to sound exactly like they sound. They want to change that up a little bit. So we work on that as well. So in some ways, it is like studying for a role. And I need to get into that mindset.
Yeah, that seems to me that would be almost a normal sense of what to do, because if, for instance, this person is writing a mystery story, a mystery novel, and they want to interact with maybe some of the people from their past, but maybe it's going to be a rough story, maybe with some violence. You have to put yourself in that position of being that kind of violent pen that's going onto the paper, as opposed to somebody that says, I want to write a comedy, a really funny story about some of my experiences. Well, now you have to wear a different hat.
Yes, and I write more than one book at a time. So I switch from one persona to another persona.
Multitasking.
Yes. And I actually find that I always want to have more than one book at a time, because sometimes it's a relief. I was working on a very serious book about human trafficking, and the stories are tragic. It pulls on your heartstrings. It's very challenging, and to extent I need to shut myself down a little bit so I can ask the appropriate questions about what's going on, so I can get the details out. Right. So I would get off that call with that author or stop writing on that for the day. And at the same time, I was coaching an author through a series of children's books. And it was so wonderful to put the heaviness aside and then go do something fun and joyful. So it's a
Yeah.
nice combination.
So the author of that serious book is living in that mode, but you can allow yourself to say, "Wait a minute, my anxiety level is getting a little too high. Set that aside and go back to the children's book or the more lighthearted thing." How,
Mhm.
do you have any estimate as to how many books you have authored as a ghostwriter?
Um, no, actually, I don't, because in publishing, you don't always write entire books.
Well,
Um, you will write chapters out of books. You will rewrite, they call it editing, but you wind up basically rewriting an entire book. You'll be brought on later in the process. I was brought in on one project. Sadly, the author passed away before the book was published. Um,
so you're
and
brought in to finish the book.
I was brought in to add some details to the book, and I had to go through it and get a feel for the author and what was going on. So bits and pieces, and between the marketing and when I was in academic publishing, I have no idea. I also have no idea how many pairs of shoes I own. I'm not going to look.
Okay, Mrs. Marcos.
Exactly. This has gotten out of hand.
No, it is all just fascinating to me because I can understand that are you also called upon, let's say I have written this manuscript for this book and all, and I've reread it and I've edited it, almost in nauseum. And I finally say, you know what? I probably need another set of eyes to read this. And then, as you said, either add the punctuation, make corrections, do some editing and all.
Mhm.
Is that what you often will be called in to do? And are you given free reins to take this manuscript and mold it into, to make it look and appear more professional too?
Yes, I do that. And it's always helpful to have another set of eyes on your book. And I also tell people, it's your book, it's not mine. I am merely making suggestions based on my experience. This is especially helpful with subject matter experts because I come in as a complete stranger to your
Mhm.
field or your topic,
Right.
because the idea behind you writing a book is to make someone else understand it. And if you haven't made me understand it, and I read a lot because of my work, then perhaps you need to go into a little bit more detail to have your reader understand it. So I'm almost an interpreter. And that's part of the work in editing. We know our topics so well, we sometimes skip over details because we think everybody knows that. So I sometimes have to ask, if you're not comfortable asking what you might consider dumb questions, this isn't the job for you. Because I have to go like, okay, back up. What is that? What do you mean by that?
Right. Yeah, you know, are there certain things that anybody, again, I am sure that there are people that are watching and listening to this show right now that are thinking, yeah, I always have wanted to write a book and all, and I just, I don't know where to start. Are there certain signals, certain things that they should know before they actually sit down and start to write that book that is inside their head?
I love the fact you brought this up. If it has ever crossed your mind, I really ought to write a book. Or if you're reading a book and you say, I could write something like this,
Mm-hmm.
that's all you need. If it has crossed your mind, if it is in your heart, I'm going to encourage you. And there are a myriad of ways to make that happen. And the big obstacle is writing a book is huge. I might as well build this 3-story house by myself. That can be overwhelming. And much like building a house, you don't have to know how to put in the plumbing. You don't have to know how to hang drywall. It's your vision, your house. There is always someone you can employ who is an expert in that area to help you with it.
Yeah, like a designer.
Exactly. And publishing has changed in such a wonderful way. It is much more accessible and affordable for people to get their books published. And I absolutely applaud that. People can go from, I'm going to, DIYers, I'm going to do everything myself. I'm going to do all the writing, and I'll get my friend who lives 2 doors down to do the proofreading, and I'm going to go in Canva and design the title, and I'm going to load it up on Amazon myself. You can have a book on Amazon, changes daily, but under $500. And of course, that changes all the time. Or you can work with a publishing company that will pretty much do everything for you. They'll hire someone like me to help you ghostwrite it. They hire designers. They have marketing teams. You can spend between $500 and $150,000. There are options for everybody.
So now the people that are watching and listening are saying, "Oh boy, I didn't know it would be that much of a, much confusion." But the idea is to reach out to somebody like yourself and have questions and say, "Look, I spent my career as an emergency room nurse, and I have seen things that are heartwarming. I have also seen things that have made me want to run over and grab a bucket."
Mm-hmm.
So, how do I take what I have learned in life and all, and then put it on paper? Because for somebody like that, it might be very hard to have to relive all of those occasions again. But what you would do would be to research all of those things that they have done and then put them in some kind of an order and an orderly manner. Am I correct?
Yes, we decide together what should be included and what is extraneous to the story. There's usually, when people are ready to work with me, they're ready to retell the stories. Sometimes not every aspect of the story, and they need to work their way up to it. And writing is very much like therapy. I need to get this out. I know it might be difficult. One of the things, and I wish I could remember, it was a famous female author, and I read this quote, and it was something along the lines of, you need to write from the place where you're healed, not when you're in the middle of the trauma. Because yes, sometimes we can't even talk about things that are very, very painful for us. However, many times when people are in the middle of something very difficult, they keep diaries. There's a website. Yeah, they journal. There's a website service for people and their families who are in hospital care. And I can't think of the name of it right now. And where they can sort of give everybody this website and inform all the friends and family in one note about everything that's going on with this patient. And that's an excellent place to keep notes of what's going on, because you want to include the raw feelings of what it's like to go through that experience and to help your reader and to be of service to others. You also want to write from your place of recovery, whether it's grief or a disease or an injury or any kind of trauma, because that helps your reader understand they too can get to the other side.
Well, and I think especially in that genre that we're talking about, where somebody has gone through a tragedy, once you've gone through the tragedy, you look for this word called closure. But then you say, I need to tell my story. Now, what does that mean? You've got to open up that closet and let all of those emotions out again in order to organize them to tell that story. Uh, and how long do you know how long ago ghostwriting started? I mean, does this go back centuries that prominent people would hire other people to write their stories?
Oh, the Bible.
Well, okay. Yeah. Yeah. God said, write it down. I'll tell you the story. You write it down.
Moses could, in fact, have been the first ghostwriter. Like,
Oh, he took the first two tablets. But and I would imagine that the hierarchy, it was something that they were not going to take the time to do because they could get other people to do it.
exactly.
But then they would take the credit for the writings. Do you ever get that feeling that when a book that you have worked on becomes a New York Times bestseller, and it's got the author's name on it, but you have worked on it, do you kind of feel like you've been dissed a little bit? Like, man, I really wrote that book, but he's taking all of the credit.
It never bothers me. It's like my secret knowledge. Like,
Uh-huh.
it really happened. I'm actually very, very happy to see my authors do well. That brings me such incredible joy. My authors are like my children. I want to nurture them. I want to encourage them. And then when we're finished the book writing process, I have to kick them out of the nest. Okay, it's time to talk to your publisher now. I'll be here if you want to call me, but off you go. So I'm so happy for them.
Yeah. Folks, MaggieMills.com, very simple website. Go to it. There's a lot of very interesting information. It's a very condensed website, but there's a few little tips and things that you say in there that really kind of get you to think about how to do the process of writing a book, especially if you are not a studied author. You have studied journalism and know how to do it, but you've always wanted to do it. How how hard is it to keep yourself involved in the story of a book, but also to be separated from the book?
I understand what you're saying, and I don't have any advice how to do that. There is something that happens that I am able to distance myself, and I really don't know what goes on there because I have to ask really difficult questions, and I'm able to do that, and then I get off the call, and I was like, whew, there's a moment of stepping away, but I have to be somewhat separate and definitely objective at all times to get through the process.
Now, if you're involved with an author and they're writing a book, and I'm going to play devil's advocate here a little bit, do you ever get into a position where you say, you know what, I think there's a person missing from this story, or this story is taking place at this party or whatever, and I think that there's a character that you should interject into it? Do you say to the author, I would suggest you do it, or do you just do it and then let them read it and say, hey, I'm glad you added Sylvia to that that group?
Okay, two answers, because we're talking about fiction and nonfiction.
Okay.
If it's fiction, the author is writing it themselves. I do not write fiction, but I will coach you through fiction. I will edit fiction. So in fiction, we work chapter by chapter. I will return the chapter and make comments like, well, what did he say? Your main character has delivered all this dialogue. Didn't someone react? They just said this really, shocking thing. and then you walked them out of the room. So I do make suggestions like that. In nonfiction, I will come back and ask, how did this impact your mother? Have you talked to your children about this? And that is a magical time. I'm not always the one who comes up with that. The author frequently comes up with this idea themselves, you know. I was talking to my mom the other day, and that is part of the healing process. In writing a book, so many authors I've worked with, that book provided the catalyst to have these meaningful conversations with people in their lives who've they went through this experience and they never really talked about it. And they will go back and say, I told my kids I was writing this book and what was going to be in the book. And they're old enough now to understand. And we had these terrific conversations. I see it happen all the time.
Do you ever find yourself in a position where somebody wants to come to you and have you assist with writing a story, and you say, I'll help you with the story, but I'm not sure how popular this is going to be? You know, let's say it's an architect who wants to write a book about how to design a high rise. You might say, oh, that sounds very interesting. Or do you just say, if you're asking me to help with it, I'm going to help you with it?
I learned a very valuable lesson when I was working at the ad agency, because I was brought up in the industry and I was trained. We do quality work. We have all these checks. We do things the best of our ability. We hire the best vendors, quality, 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 doing it all the right way. That's how I grew up in the industry. And the owner brought in an account that just turned my aesthetics inside out. I could not believe we were doing this. This person owned a chain of retail establishments. And my career was spent finding a photographer, overseeing photo shoots, doing press checks, total quality. This person hand wrote their ads. They weren't even typeset. It looked like it was written down on a sheet of a composition book. And I went, did they hire us to actually do this? No, do it like this. Well, I had to go through and help that get produced. And those ads and that process made so dang much money, I had to eat crow. So I learned that what I like, and I saw a lot of stuff in advertising I thought was awful, and it made a lot of money and everybody was happy. So my opinion is not the last word. I am happy for them. I hope they all do well. And things I just, it could work. It could work. I am not the harbinger. That's not the one I want. Arbiter of good taste. There we go.
Well, that's what we were talking about earlier when we said it's always good to have a second or third or fourth pair of eyes look at the project, because if 4 people look at that book manuscript, they may come back with 4 different opinions. You may end up, with 2 that positive, 2 that are negative, and you want to take the positive and negative points and weave those together so that it ends up being better for the whole manuscript.
Yes, and I always take the publishers into consideration, their opinions, because they know what is selling today, what is popular today, what is trending. And that can be important to people depending on how they want to use their book. Some people just want to get the story out. It's their legacy. It's a beautiful story. They don't really care what's top on the New York Times bestseller list. Their story is really important. People who are making bigger investments and have business ideas about that book, you want to know everything. You want to know the covers that are trending, the colors that are trending, the topics the categories, the typeface, how to place it in Amazon, the best time to release it. And the publishers are on top of that. And I defer to them.
You ever written a book about dogs?
Let me see.
I happen to be looking
No.
over your shoulder there at your dog that's on your bed.
Oh, wait a minute. There we go. She heard you.
Just crawled up there and thought, oh, I'm going to check this out too. Have you interacted with some really famous people in helping them publish their books?
I have interacted with people who are known publicly in a number of fields, and discretion is the part of my business. I never give names away.
Okay.
And the people you would think would be high maintenance and difficult are lovely. And the people you think who are warm and fuzzy.
And the opposite can be true. I know that. I have lived that myself in the past, but in reading over some of the information, folks, this is the information that I got about Maggie. She has worked with lawyers, preachers, bikers, educators, athletes, entrepreneurs, cybersecurity sleuths. Now that must have been a fun one.
It actually was a lot of fun.
And even a few actors. You mentioned that you work with psychics and politicians, and also it seems like there is no playground that you're not willing to play on.
So far, there hasn't been. And I intentionally welcome clients, authors, collaborators who are different than I am, because it gives me an opportunity to learn about them. It puts me in a position of, I cannot prejudge you because maybe we don't think alike on religion or politics.
Mm-hmm.
It's a wonderful exercise in not being judgmental, in stepping away from my ego, because it's their story, not mine. And I recommend that in whatever line of work we are, embrace people who are different than you. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to see you're more alike than you are different. And you don't have to agree with them at the end of the day, but you learn where they're coming from, and that's so valuable.
Well, I have over the years, through my interviews, I have learned so many very interesting things about so many different people, not only their stories, but their backstories. And I'm sure that you have a Rolodex up here of facts and figures about people and places and things and all that is truly valuable. Has Maggie Mills ever thought about, you know what, I'm going to sit down and write a book about my experiences?
My PR person keeps telling me, Maggie, write your book. I'm too busy. I'm still creating all these memories and doing all of these crazy things. And I'm just having too much fun. At some point, I don't do anything I tell other people to do. I'm not keeping notes about it. I'm forgetting half of the details. My friends remind me. We'll all get together and they'll remind me of something I said or something I did. I'm like, oh yeah, right. That's pretty funny.
When you work with an author, have you had authors that have said, you have been so helpful in helping me put this book together that I want you to be able to take some credit, and the book will be written by so and so with help from Maggie Mills, or you strictly like to be left out of the limelight?
I have been given subtle credit, which is more than enough for me. there will be a mention of me, but not exactly what I did.
Like in
And
a
I'm
forward or an acknowledgement page or so?
Yes, my name gets mentioned. And there are a few occasions where I'll get a copy of a book and people will say, look on page 4. And I go, oh my gosh, I'm there. It's not necessary. I truly receive so much joy from watching their success. That's enough for me. And then when I do see my name in print, I'm all 5 years old.
Now, if there's somebody that's watching and listening to the show that says, ghostwriting sounds like something I might be interested in, can they reach out to you and ask questions about how to get started?
Yes, I've had a few calls with people about this recently. And here's the first thing. This is like the gatekeeper statement. If they want to do this, I say, you need to like people. And that gets rid of a lot of people who think they want to be a ghostwriter, because people look at it as a cool way to earn a living, and it is. They think it's something they can do from home, and they can, but it is not a job for certain types of introverts because of this type of thing right here.
Okay.
A lot of conversation that goes on. You have to be comfortable with hearing things that people tell you that don't align with your belief system. I've been in very serious conversations with people about the mating habits of gray aliens, Sasquatch, birds falling from the sky, all types of alien things, all kinds of beliefs. And you need to honor and try not to roll your eyes. But I'm coming from a place of, it could be true. I don't know. Just because I haven't met an alien doesn't mean they're not out there. And so people need to be very open-minded and non-judgmental and respectful. So it's more about attitude, personality traits than your ability to write.
Well, there still, I think, lurks inside of me a book. And I think that if I ever get to the point where I say it's time to put it on paper, I may just have to call Maggie Mills and say, hey, help me get to the point where I can one day walk into Barnes and Noble and right there is my book that I at least spoke to Maggie about, and then she helped put it together.
That's a beautiful picture. And I truly encourage everybody, and this will sound like a plug, but I don't totally mean it that way. It can get expensive for people. It can get time consuming. It can be intimidating. So I started a YouTube channel where I could put little quick videos about things to know writing your own book, because the best ideas do not always come with the biggest budgets. And if there's anything I've learned, anything I've experienced, and sharing that can help someone, I want to do it because I'm completely in love with what I do. And there's lots of help out there for people. I'm getting ready to make a video now on all the places you can go to get information and help. And everybody's going to tell you something different.
Right.
It's so important for people who are writing to understand you do not have to follow somebody else's process. This is especially important for people who have dyslexia or ADD, any kind of communication differences. You work with what makes you feel comfortable. And this is a lot of what we get established when I first start working with somebody.
Yeah.
Everybody has a different attention span. So there's so many tools and even adapted technologies for people. So if it's ever crossed your mind, I'd really like to write a book. Don't say, I can't type, or I'm slow, or I don't have the patience. Do the research. There's a way to figure it out.
Or reach out to Maggie Mills with your questions, and she'll
Right.
help guide you on that path.
Mhm.
Maggie, it's been a ball talking with you. I really have enjoyed it. I every week I end my show with a quote from Oscar Wilde, and that is, "Be yourself, because everyone else is already taken." I'm sure you know the quote. It means a lot to me, and I thank you for taking the time and sharing a little bit about what ghostwriting is all about.
Oh, thank you. Any opportunity to encourage people, and you've provided us with that today. And what you and I do is so similar in you have to care about people and be curious about their lives and want to empower them with what you do. Look how you help people. And I know you've got thousands of stories waiting to get told.
Well, that'll do it for another episode of Someone You Should Know. Go out and make it a great day. And again, MaggieMills.com. Thank you very, very much, Maggie. Very much appreciated sharing the conversation.
Thank you, Stuart. It's been so much fun.
Someone You Should Know